Today we are going to be going over some of the NMUN Rules of Procedure short form. These are listed on the back of your delegate program that you get. And these are also listed in the order of precedence, meaning that they're going to be the ones that are voted on, how they are voted on, what order they are in. So starting with the point of order, a point of order is used to correct an error in procedure and procedure only. They're not used to ask questions. They're not used to kind of point out, like the room is cold or, you said the date wrong. These are there to correct an error in the procedure of the rules of procedure. They don't require any debate, nor do they require any vote. And it refers to specific rules that, your dais may have accidentally misspoken or accidentally overlooked. We're human, these things happen. And so you would point of order the chair to specify and point out something that was done in error accidentally. The next one on your list is appeal of the chair. This is to challenge an initial decision of the chair on a point of order. Going back to point of order, the chair can overrule it and can say, delegate, I'm so sorry, this isn't a point of order. We don't see this very often. We don't see an appeal of the chair very often whatsoever. It specifically is there to question the chair's ruling on what they decided the ruling was for the point of order. This requires no debate and it requires a majority vote. And again, you don't really see appeal of the chair. Usually this would come more in handy later on in, the conference, but it's something that we don't see very frequently. Next is suspension of the meeting. This is to request a recess of meeting for a defined set time. It requires no debate and is a simple majority vote. This is what we use in NMUN to go into informal debate or a break or whatever for a specific amount of time. Normally, your dais will give you a specified amount of time that they don't want to go over, whether that be 60 minutes, 90 minutes, etc. Or they might give you a time that we need to be back, and they might kind of, ask you to request a time with that. So it's a simple, the Republic of Korea request a suspension of the meeting for 30 minutes. The dais will then repeat that back to you, and then you will vote on it in the order received if there are multiple suspensions of the meeting. The next rule on the short form is the adjournment of the meeting. This is solely to end the meeting. This is to say that we're done, it's over. We only use this on the final day, and it ends committee for the year. So please don't use this unless it is the final day and your dais specifically calls for it. It requires no debate and a simple majority vote. And again, this is only used on the last day of conference. And finally, for my small segment, is the adjournment of debate. This ends debate on the topic that you are currently discussing without a specific substantive vote. It requires two persons to speak in favor for and two persons to speak against, and it is a simple majority vote. It requires a recorded vote, and it simply ends debate on the topic. There's no voting, you don't move into voting procedure, and it would push you into the next topic.
The next motion on the short form rules is closure of debate. This will move the body immediately into voting, and it is a motion that will allow the body to immediately vote on all draft resolutions. This motion requires 2 speakers against and a 2/3 majority in order to pass. The next motion is division of the proposal. This used to be division of the question. This motion is to consider a clause or clauses separately from the rest of a draft resolution to create an annex. They're voted on in order of most to least radical change to the draft resolution. The first part is a procedural vote on if this motion should be considered. This motion requires 2 speakers in favor and 2 against and a majority to pass. And if it passes, the clauses are removed and voted on separately. And if it does not pass, there's no changes to the clauses. They just remain in the draft resolution. And the second part of this motion is a substantive vote to accept or reject the separate clauses. It doesn't require any speakers for or against and a majority to pass. And if it passes, the annex passes. And if it fails, the clauses are discarded and are no longer part of any draft resolution. However, given that this is really used to highlight clauses and to showcase their importance, usually we would expect that that second vote would also pass if the first part did. And the third motion used during voting procedure is request for a recorded vote. Now, this is different from previous years. In previous years, there was an option to adopt by acclamation, and that was made as an actual motion. This year, in order to more closely align with UN procedure, as most resolutions at the United Nations are adopted by consensus, indicating member states would have voted in favor or to abstain during a recorded vote, member states who are opposed would request a recorded vote to note their opposition and prevent that automatic adoption by acclamation. So, such a request will lead to an electronic vote, and absent such a request, the draft resolution will be considered adopted. So, if a member state would like to voice opposition during the voting procedure, they can request a recorded vote. And this is automatically granted, and as there is electronic voting, there is no more roll call voting. However, other motions may still be considered. This motion does not require any speakers against and is automatically granted.
Next, we'll be discussing the motion for reconsideration. The motion for reconsideration is used to reopen debate on an issue or topic, but only after members of the committee have voted in favor for adjournment of debate. So what this means is that a motion for adjournment must have occurred and has to be passed by the committee in order for reconsideration to occur. If this has happened, reconsideration could come forth, but does require a procedural debate with 2 speakers against and a 2/3 majority to pass. If this motion does pass, it would reopen debate on a topic that was previously ended by a motion for adjournment. Next would be to set the speaker's time. Now, this motion is used to set or change the time allotted to each speaker in a committee. It does require procedural debate as well, with 2 speakers in favor and 2 speakers against, but just a simple majority to pass. It is very important to note, though, for this motion, that it is rarely used at the United Nations and does require prior approval from your dais or may be ruled out of order. This motion also is never permitted during your first committee session. Next would be to close the speakers list. Now, a motion to close the speakers list often comes up when members feel they are close to consensus or approaching voting procedure. It does not require procedural debate and only needs a simple majority to pass. If this motion does pass, a speakers list will be closed and no members within the committee will be added to that list. Now, it is very important to note, too, with a closure of the speakers list, that once the list is exhausted, the committee will move directly into voting procedure. So please keep this in mind with any form of motion for a closure of the speakers list. Next would be the opposite, which would be to reopen the speakers list. Now, as you can imagine, this motion is used to open a closed list. It does not require any sort of procedural debate and only needs a simple majority to pass. If it does pass, it would reopen a closed list and would allow members to be added right back to the speakers list. Finally, we'll discuss the adoption of the agenda. Now, the adoption of the agenda is likely to be seen in your first committee session and aims to establish your agenda order in your committee. It does not require procedural debate and only needs a simple majority to pass, and if it does pass, it will set the agenda for what you will be discussing in your future committee sessions. So this could be seen even as topic 1, then topic 2, or topic 2, then topic 1. It ultimately depends upon how many topics are within your committee.